All right, welcome back for part two of Intro into the Power BI Desktop environment. So, quick review of what we've done so far. We have connected to four data sources that all involve movie transactions for a business that would be like a Blockbuster or a Redbox. Those data sources include a database that has transaction information, an XML file that has account information, a CSV file that's got rental information, or excuse me, inventory information over here, and an Excel file that's got rate information. So we have imported those, or we've connected to those. We've transformed them to make sure that they are formatted correctly and there's no invalid data. We've created the one-to-many relationships in this Snowflake schema. And now we're ready to take a peek at our data in data view. So when you go to data view in the Power BI desktop, it is kind of what you see is what you get. So the data that you've connected to, the data that you've transformed, you see that appear here. Over on the right hand side, sort of like Power Pivot in Excel or just regular pivot tables in Excel, you'll see your multiple sources. So there's my four files that I've connected to, and there are the values or the fields that are inside them. Okay, like so. And at this point, if we wanted to, if you like the data, we could actually just start creating our dashboard report. So if I click on report view, this takes me to my Power BI dashboard. The dashboard is the part that everybody loves. So this is the part that creates these beautiful data visualizations that allow you to get kind of a 10,000 square foot or the 10,000 foot above ground view of our data that you then have the ability to drill into to a somewhat granular level. Now, in the report field that we're looking at right now, you have pages. You can have multiple pages of a report that can be filtered individually or filtered as a group. On the right hand side, what you'll see, sort of like if you were building a pivot chart, is all of the different data fields that are available from your data model. And all of these can be used to visualize based on your data model, on your relationships. So I'm going to just start, and we're going to end up having to go back and use some DAX to make this more interesting. But let me just start to give you some basics. So say, for example, I wanted to look at our membership types. So I can grab membership type, boom, I can pop that over here. And based on membership type, so there we've got bronze, gold, silver. Say I'm interested in just how much you pay if it's a bronze, gold, or silver membership type. So I can grab rental cost and I pop that in. And that's how much you actually pay, right? So bronze pays 325, gold pays 99, silver pays 275. We've got that, and that individual visualization that we've created would be considered a table. Table appears right here under our visualization section. So say I wanted to make this more interesting though, and I'm interested in how much we've made per membership type, not what it costs. Well, I actually don't have that anywhere. So if I were to go to rental cost, much like with the pivot table, and I were to click the down arrow and just say sum it all up, when I do that, it just gives me $6.99. And $6.99 as a calculation setting for this is what it's doing is if I change this calculation setting to do not summarize, is it's just adding up these three things. So it's not actually telling me what my transaction values are. Now there are several things we can do to make this work, but I wanted to take this as an opportunity to introduce you, and I'm going to delete this, to the concept of DAX, which is data analysis expressions. So I'm going to actually leave my report here, go back to my data view, and look at my transactions table here. So let's talk a little bit about DAX and what you can do with DAX. So when working with DAX, you have several different things you can do. The two big things that you'll do when working with DAX, which is data analysis expressions, is you'll create either calculated columns, right? So that's a new column that has some kind of calculation in it based on a mathematical expression, or you will create a measure, which is much the same thing, except it won't necessarily appear in the column here. It will be something that will appear over here in your field value that you can directly dashboard. So, excuse me. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a calculated column right here. So I'm going to click New Column. And what this does is it's going to actually create a field inside my query here. Okay. Now there's actually a couple different ways we could do this to make this work. We could actually do a join as well. So we could take the rates field from our rates table over here and do a join to add that here to allow us to do some calculations. But I want to show you how DAX works. So I want to introduce you to just a basic notion of how this works. So DAX stands for Data Analysis Expressions. And what it is it's very similar in many ways to writing functions in Excel. So the way that you can write functions in Excel that create some kind of expression or calculation based on input values, you can do much the same thing in Power BI, except you use something called DAX instead of just regular old Excel functions. Now, the positive of this is that these DAX functions or these DAX calculations, they work a lot like Excel. So if you're transitioning from Excel into Power BI, it's not too horribly difficult. The one thing that you need to understand is that DAX uses structured references and not A1 style referencing. So now what does that mean? Well, Excel uses, you actually have several options with Excel, but the default referencing technique in Excel is called A1 style. What does that mean? Well, if I jump into Excel for just a second and take a look, so here's Excel. So cell A1, I know that it's A1 because I go to column and I go to the row 1. If I want C1, well, C is the column, 1 would be the row, so C1. That's called A1 style referencing. There's actually several different types of referencing that you can work with. So there's A1 style referencing, which is what you're familiar with. That's the default referencing style of Excel. But then there's also something called R1C1 referencing, which is row then column. So for example, 1, 2, right? So if I typed 1, comma 2, that would be the equivalent of row 1, column 2, which would be actually cell B1. That's called R1C1 referencing, and actually, that's actually something that Excel can do as well. Most people don't use that referencing technique in Excel, but you can do it if you wanted to. If you wanted to change your settings, that is feasible. If you go into File and Options, and from Options, if you go to Formulas, you actually have that option to use R1C1 style instead of A1 style referencing. No one ever does it, but that is an option for you in Excel. So that's the second kind of referencing technique. The bigger referencing technique that we're going to talk about in DAX is something called structured references. And there's two different types of structured references. We've talked about that a little bit in Excel. There's fully qualified structured references, and there's unqualified structured references. And we're going to see that in just a second in Excel. A quick 10,000, a quick abbreviation of how that works is a fully qualified structured reference would give you the name of the object and then the corresponding field in that object that you're referencing. And a unqualified structured reference would just tell you the name of the field that you're referencing. And we'll see that in DAX in just a minute. So I'm actually going to get out of Excel, go back into Power BI, and I'm going to start by using a function called related. So let's talk about what the related function is. The related function is the equivalent of VLOOKUP for DAX. So what you would be able to do with this is, based on the relationships in this table, you can actually pull fields from other related tables. So you see I've got the rates table rental cost. Okay, that would be the example of a fully qualified structured reference, right? It's the rates object table and the corresponding rental cost. So based on the relationship, we're doing a lookup based on the related function that's going to pull the rates from the rates table into into our transactions table. So now there's several ways that this could have been done. I don't want to say that this is the only way or even that this is the most efficient way, because you could have done this with a join. You could create a measure to calculate total value that we've earned. There's several different ways we can do this, but I just wanted to show you a calculated column using DAX. So this is a very simple function. Within DAX, it's the equivalent of a VLOOKUP, which is very common in Excel. And what we've done is we've said, look at the rates table rental cost field, and it's created that column. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this, and we'll just call this total. There we go. And what this has done is now this has created a calculated column inside the transactions based on this, based on the price of each rental, right? So it's looking at the account, It's determining what their account membership is based on the relationship, and then it's using that related DAX function to actually tell us, hey, this is 99 cents, or hey, this is 275. Because if we were to look up account 1546, we'd find that Jane Wilkes has a silver membership, which if we go to our rates table, is 275. So see, it's all sort of working together. Now, when we go back to our dashboard, let's do some stuff. So let's grab our membership type, and we'll just pop that in. And it doesn't really matter if you pull type from here or type from here. It's the same type, and it's relationship that's been set up, right? So I just grabbed that one because it was the most convenient. So I'm going to grab type, and I'm going to drag it in. Now down at the bottom, I have an option called total. See that? So that calculated column that I just created now appears as something that I can visualize. So if I take total and pop it over here, it's going to automatically aggregate this. So now let's talk about what this does. So once you drag fields onto your report, it creates something called a visualization. So right now you've got your first visualization, which is really, really simple, and it's showing us how much we've earned based on membership type, bronze, silver, gold, okay, right off the bat. So now you can change visualizations however you see fit. When you start to drag them in, Power BI will try to automatically visualize that data, and maybe it does it the way you want to, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it calculates the way you want it to, it aggregates the way you want it to, or maybe it doesn't. And you have total control over that. So if it tries to create something like a table, for example, here, and you thought, ooh, I would have rather had a pie chart, you can simply change your table visualization to a pie chart visualization. Oops, I didn't have it selected when I clicked it. So we'll click here to a pie chart visualization, and voila, you've got that. And if you didn't like pie chart, you can go through anything you want. So boom, boom, boom. Now keep in mind, just like when you work in data analytics, some visualizations are better for certain types of data than others. So just because you can doesn't mean you necessarily should, but you do have the option to kind of fiddle through these. So this one's actually not bad, but I'm going to switch it back to table so we can talk about aggregation for a second. So now in Microsoft Excel, you learned about tables. And you know that one of the benefits of tables is that they automatically aggregate data if you want. They can perform basic calculations. This table here can do much the same thing. And you'll see over here in values, kind of like with the pivot table in Excel, if I click on total, see there's a little drill down here? If I click that, I can change the calculation settings. So if I go do not summarize, it tells me what the price per movie would be, right? Based on membership type. If I go to sum, now it's telling me how much we've made per movie. And you can do that at every visualization. So each one of these are almost like individual pivot charts and tables within this bigger report canvas, okay? Now, like we touched on at the beginning, you can have multiple pages of a report, just like you would have pages to a physical report, and each page is diverse from the other page, if you want it to be, okay? So I could have different pages labeled for different things, like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, okay? And once I build this dashboard, which we'll do in a second, we can send this to the Power BI cloud, right? We can click publish, and when we send it to the cloud, we can then allow our colleagues, users, whoever that may be, to connect to this and pull from it what they want. For now, let's create some visualizations. So this is okay. I like this. So I'm going to go over here, and I'll just do our totals for membership types. Now, on top of that, though, I think it would be nice to look at this graphically as well. So I'm going to grab that same thing. I'm going to start creating my visualization again using type and total. And I'm going to take this table, which it tried to aggregate on its own, and I'm going to switch that over to a pie chart. We like that. That's pretty good. Okay. Now, on top of that, I think it might be interesting. What if we wanted to know how much money we're making based on movie rating, for example? All right, well, how are we going to do that? Well, we'll find our movie ratings, which are going to be here. I'll pop that over here, drop it in. There's my movie ratings, right? All those. And if I'm interested in how much I've earned, all right, well, I'll go back to total again. I'll pop that in. And that's how much we've made based on movie rating, right? So this adds up 129.43 for grand total, 129.43 grand total there. Now, I must tell you, one of my weaknesses, I'm definitely a tech guy, I'm a data guy. I'm not really a visual guy, so I find that my dashboards, I've seen prettier dashboards that have been created compared to some of the things that I do, and that is really where you and your ability to visualize data kind of becomes something that you're good with from your own personal creative perspective. So I'm going to do my best to make this, a beautiful dashboard, but I'm not super creative. Technically, it's going to be great. A lot of times, what I'll do is create these dashboards based on what I think other people may want to see versus me just dreaming it up. Because a lot of times, I just look at the data at the granular level in the data view. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to create some visualizations. We're going to add a little bit of artificial intelligence to this, which is pretty fun, and we'll add some labels and call it a day. So I'm going to insert a title first. So it's always good to label your data, and there's several different ways we can do it. I'm going to label mine using text boxes. Okay. So when I insert a text box, you can do this when you insert a text box. It's just like a text box that's in Excel. So whatever you type, it's not going to actually calculate anything, and it can be formatted any way you like. So see, right off the bat here, I can go in and make this whatever. We'll go with Calibri, and we can change the size to anything we want. Okay. Once we do that, so maybe we bold, italics, whatever you'd like. We can shrink this up, and you can move it wherever you like. So right now, we'll just move it to the middle, and we'll keep on cooking. Okay. Maybe move this up a little bit. Maybe move this up a little bit. Move this here. Okay. So what else might we want to see in our report? So say we're interested in how many movies individual people rent, right? Like, what if we wanted to reward our most frequent customer? Well, we can absolutely do that. Let's grab last name, and we'll pop that in. And see, it guessed again, right? So when I popped that in, it went, all right, well, let me just give you all the last names. Okay. So from there, I can grab my transaction numbers and I'll pop that in. So a couple things just happened here. Do you see it just aggregate? So right off the bat, it decided, hey, I think these are things that we want to add up. And on top of that, it's formatted with double decimal point or with 2 decimal points like currency, which is also not good. So before we continue, maybe we can fix some of this. So we'll go back to data view and we'll look at our transactions and see there's those 2 decimal points. We didn't really like that, right? So right here where it's got 2 decimal points under our formatting, I'm going to take that, I'm going to make it 0 decimal points, and all of a sudden, boom, those are gone. Go back to my visualization. Now those are gone. I'm going to jump over to transaction. See, it wanted to summarize on its own, right? We don't want to do that. So if I do not summarize, let's see what that does. Now that's showing us every individual transaction, right? So Blakely has 3, Brunk's got a bunch, right? So maybe when we summarize, instead of summarizing it as a sum or don't summarize, we make it a count. And all of a sudden we find out these are the number of transactions that each one of these have had. Now, if we wanted to make this more interesting, we could change this to a different kind of visualization. And it's really up to you, but I've got a fun one that I'm going to choose over here, right there, called a tree map. And when I do that one, basically the larger that box inside this visualization, the more movies have been rented. So you can very quickly look at this and decide who has rented the most movies or who is in that same category of movies. And we could really supplement this if we wanted to. Now see, it just inserted that before I wanted to, so we'll take that away. We could supplement this by adding an actual matrix if we wanted, or adding a table that showed us the numbers as well. But it's just a pretty nifty visualization. Now, instead of supplementing it with that matrix, and it actually guessed what I wanted to do, but I'm going to do this on my own. We're going to use an artificial intelligence feature that's part of Power BI called Q&A. Okay. So now Q&A feature is one of the newer features in the Power BI Desktop, and it's actually really awesome. Think of it almost like an automatic query. So when I add this Q&A feature here, if my data model is built correctly, I can ask it questions and it will start to help me. So say I type in the last name, I don't know who was in our, let's look at Camp, C-A-M-P, Camp. And it starts to pull up all the different customers that have the last name Camp, which is only one. I click it and it goes, hey, here's Camp, here's his transactions, here's his information, right? Say I was interested in gold membership types. I type in gold. It's going to say gold membership type cost 99 cents. So basically, it's just a quick ability to search your information and get information, or search your report and get information from it quickly. It's actually pretty nifty. It's a cool feature, and it will only get better with time. Okay, and only get better with time. So now with this, our report is done for now, but know that we can add additional pages if we wanted, right? Page 2, page 3. And within those additional pages, if we wanted, we could actually even link to other pages. So if I wanted to, I can insert hyperlinks that just allow me to go from one to the other. So just click from one link to the other link, which is pretty nifty. Okay. So we can automate all that stuff. When you're done, when you're done with this and you feel like this is completely created the way you want it to be, you have the ability to see here, we've got buttons here, and you have the ability to create links off those buttons to take you to other pages. When you're done with this, you click Publish to send to the Power BI service. And once it goes up into that Power BI cloud, you will then be able to distribute that, set user privileges, and monitor who is managing and looking at all of your data from there. And we'll make another video on that. So for now, that is it, my friends. And we are out of here.